I gave my parents 4 hours to leave the house on Thanksgiving. They laughed when I said it. They thought I was unemployed. They thought I had moved back home because I couldn't afford rent. They thought I was eating their food, using their electricity, sitting at their table out of desperation. What they didn't know was that the table, the electricity, the roof, the walls, the very ground beneath their feet, it all belonged to me. And at midnight, their lease expired. "It's just a chair, Sarah. Stop being so dramatic and let your brother sit down. You're young. You can stand ... My mother said it casually, swirling a glass of vintage Cabernet I had paid for in a dining room she believed was hers. My brother Leo, 30 years old and allergic to steady employment, smirked as he dragged my custom ergonomic chair away from the head of the table and dropped into it like a king claiming his throne. 6 months earlier, I had undergone a minor spinal procedure. That chair wasn't decorative. It was necessary. $3,000 of lumbar support so I could sit through long executive meetings without pain shooting down my legs. Leo leaned back and stretched dramatically. "Wow," he said, grinning. "This is actually comfortable." My father didn't even look up from his plate. "Don't make a scene, Sarah," he muttered. "It's Thanksgiving." I stood there, feeling the familiar heat of humiliation crawl up my neck. The golden child had spoken. The utility child would adjust. Growing up in the Miller household meant understanding your role. Leo was potential. I was responsibility. If something needed fixing, I fixed it. If bills were short, I covered them. If there was praise to give, it went to him. Leo had been a high school star once. My parents built their entire identity around his promise. When college didn't work out, they called it finding himself. When his craft brewery idea collapsed before brewing a single batch, they blamed the market. When day trading wiped out my mother's retirement account, they said he just needed more support. For 10 years, they poured money into his ventures. Retirement funds, home equity, savings meant for emergencies. Every failure was framed as a stepping stone. Every setback was temporary genius misunderstood. Meanwhile, I went to a state school on scholarships and side jobs. I worked 3 jobs at one point: mornings in a cafe, afternoons tutoring, nights interning at a tech startup. I graduated without debt, climbed slowly but relentlessly, and eventually secured a senior vice president position at a global tech firm. I never told them how much I made. It wouldn't have mattered. The few times I mentioned promotions, my mother would smile politely and say, "That's nice, dear." But Leo might be getting a sponsorship for his gaming channel. 3 years ago, the illusion collapsed. The bank was weeks from foreclosing on the family home, the house my grandfather built with his own hands. My father called me crying. They were going to lose everything. Leo was in Bali at the time, decompressing on a credit card my parents had co-signed. I had the money to save them, more than enough. But I knew my parents. If I handed them cash, it would trickle straight into Leo's next opportunity. So I did something smarter. I formed an anonymous LLC, Silver Oak Holdings. Through that entity, I purchased the house from the bank in a private sale. Then I had a lawyer contact my parents with an offer. A private investor had acquired the property and was willing to lease it back to them long-term at a reduced rate. They cried tears of gratitude for a faceless miracle. They never once suspected the miracle was the daughter they barely noticed. 6 months ago, I moved back in, claiming I had been laid off and needed time to regroup. In reality, I was working remotely, managing a team of 50 from the guest bedroom. I told myself I wanted to see if, without financial pressure, they could become a real family. Within 48 hours, the answer was clear. Laundry appeared outside my door without a word. My father would call upstairs for me to mow the lawn while he watched sports. Leo returned from Bali with debt, entitlement, and a streaming career he insisted required the largest bedroom in the house. He tossed my office equipment into the hallway. "You're not even working," he said, eyes glued to his phone. "I need the space. You wouldn't understand." My parents backed him immediately. Leo is building something, my mother told me. You're just between things. Be supportive. Double quotes. And now at Thanksgiving dinner. He wanted my chair. When my mother suggested I sit on the porch if I was going to be sour, something inside me went cold. Not angry, not explosive, just clear. You're right, I said evenly. I shouldn't be dramatic. I'll grab something from my room. Leo laughed. Yeah, maybe grab your mood stabilizers while you're at it. Double quotes. I walked upstairs, steady and silent. I opened my safe and removed a leather-bound folder containing the original deed, the LLC documents, the lease agreement, and the official notice of non-renewal I had mailed 30 days earlier. I had hoped I wouldn't need it, but mercy requires mutual respect, and there was none. I returned to the dining room and stood at the head of the table. Before dessert, I said, we need to talk about the house. Double quotes. My father groaned. Not now. Double quotes. Leo smirked. Actually, this is perfect timing. My girlfriend Chloe is moving in Monday. We're turning the basement into a studio. You'll need to clear your stuff out, my mother added. Honestly, Sarah, maybe it's time you found your own place. You can't live off us forever. Double quotes. The irony was almost beautiful. Live off you? I repeated softly. My father slammed his hand down. This is our house. Our rules. I opened the folder and slid the deed across the table. It hasn't been your house for 3 years. He squinted at the document. Silver Oak Holdings? That's the company we rent from. I placed the LLC registration beside it. Owner and Managing Director, Sarah Miller. The silence was immediate and total. My mother's face drained of color. My father's hand trembled. Leo grabbed the papers, scanning them like they might rearrange themselves into something less threatening. This is fake, he said weakly. It's not, I replied. I bought the house at foreclosure. I created the LLC to protect myself. Every rent payment you sent went toward property taxes and maintenance you never handled. My mother stammered, Why didn't you tell us? We could have worked together. We're family. I laughed softly. Family? You just told me to sit on the porch. Double quotes. My father found his voice again. We have a lease. Yes, I said calmly. A 3-year lease. It expires tonight at midnight. And you've already violated Clause 14B by attempting to add a permanent resident without landlord consent. My mother's eyes flicked toward a pile of unopened envelopes on the sideboard. I mailed the non-renewal notice 30 days ago, I added. You probably thought it was junk. Leo swallowed. You wouldn't kick us out on Thanksgiving. I checked my watch. It's 8 p.m. You have 4 hours. My father called the police in a panic. When the officers arrived, I presented the deed, the lease, and the expiration notice. After reviewing the documents, one officer turned to my father. Sir, this is a civil matter. She owns the property. You'll need to vacate. Watching my father realize his authority ended where my ownership began was surreal. It's for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one shrinking. The moving crew I had arranged arrived promptly. They worked efficiently, unaffected by tears or accusations. Boxes were packed. Furniture was wrapped. Belongings were loaded. As the house emptied, it felt lighter. On the sidewalk, surrounded by suitcases, my parents looked smaller than I remembered. Leo was frantically calling friends, his voice losing confidence with each rejection. My mother approached the door quietly. Please, she whispered. Be the bigger person. Double quotes. I had been the bigger person for 28 years. It had only made me easier to step on. I handed her an envelope containing a $5,000 check. This is the last financial help you'll ever receive from me, I said. Consider it closure. I closed the door and turned the deadbolt. The sound was clean. Final. I walked back into the dining room. The table was a mess of half-eaten food and spilled wine. I pulled my ergonomic chair back into place and sat down. They were right about One thing, it was just a chair, but it was my chair, in my house. A week later, I sold the property for nearly double what I had paid. I moved to the coast, purchased a penthouse overlooking the ocean, and began building a life defined by choice rather than obligation. My parents now live in a modest apartment. Leah works a steady job for the first time in years. Sometimes, being the good daughter isn't about sacrifice. Sometimes, it's about boundaries. They thought I was the floor mat, but I was the foundation. And when the foundation moves, everything built on it has to adjust.